Debugging is an important and sometimes challenging task. Today, I will show you 5 tools that can make your debugging process more efficient and easier. Let's begin with Laravel Debugbar. Debugbar is an external package that you can install via Composer using the command shown on the screen. After installation, you will notice a small bar at the bottom of your Laravel pages. However, to use all the features of this tool, you may need to configure it first. If you don't use auto-discovery, you will need to manually add the service provider and alias to use the Facade. To do this, navigate to the Bootstrap providers file and add a line for the service provider. Then, navigate to the app provider's app service provider file and add the debugbar alias. After doing this, it should work properly. The debug bar appears at the bottom of Laravel pages. You can open it to access various useful information, such as memory usage, request duration, route type, and full request data with headers. In the Messages tab, you can see messages sent by your code for debugging purposes. I will demonstrate how to use it shortly. In the Timeline tab, you can view the time spent on booting and running your application. In the Views tab, you can see the templates used to render the page. In the Route tab, you can check middleware and other routing details, such as the line of code defining the route in your routing file. In the Queries tab, you can review all the executed queries. This is particularly helpful when something isn't working as expected while using eloquent models. You can examine raw queries, copy them, and debug the issue directly in your database. Finally, in the Models tab, you can see the models used by your application. To display a message in the Messages tab, you can use the debugbar facade and send a specific message. You can use methods like debug, info, notice, error, and a few more. Depending on your choice, different colors and icons will be displayed. You can place it almost anywhere in your code, and it's useful for checking if a specific part of your code is being reached. I will provide more details in a dedicated video for this tool. Debugbar should only be accessible in the development environment, so you should install it with the dev parameter. When you disable app debug in your end file, the bar will disappear. The second tool is built into Laravel and works similarly to debugbar messages, but the messages are stored in log files. To use it, you need to use the Laravel log facade in your code. You can log different types of messages. If you're using debugbar, these messages will appear both in the debugbar and in the log file at the same time. This approach has the advantage that the messages are saved even when app debug is set to false, meaning they won't be visible to users. This makes it suitable for use in production as well. It's worth noting that using this method for actions during page load is not ideal, as it can unnecessarily increase the page loading time. However, it can be helpful in parts of your code that are rarely executed, such as handling unexpected errors, to log messages and identify unhandled situations. Next tool is Laravel Telescope. To install it, use Composer command. After installation, you should use command php artisan telescope install and run migrations using php artisan migrate. You can access Telescope in Telescope route. By default, it will be accessible only in the local environment, but it's possible to configure it for production too, what I show in a moment. In Telescope dashboard, you can see incoming requests, dumps, or executed commands with details. It's useful for finding bugs, but not only for this. It's something more. You can use it to monitor your application. All options I will explain in separate video. If you want it to be working only in local environment, you should add dev param while using Composer command, and then additionally navigate to Bootstrap providers, removing line with Telescope service provider, and in app providers, app service provider, register it only for local environment. You should also prevent it from being auto-discovered by adding following lines to Composer JSON. But it's your choice. Telescope can be secured for use in production. In this case, you need to use an authorization gate. To do this, navigate to App Provider's Telescope Service Provider, and in the GATE method, define an array of email addresses that should be allowed to access the dashboard. I recommend avoiding hard-coded strings. If access is meant for a single admin, you can define the email as an environment variable, pass it to the config, and retrieve the value from there. For multiple users, the approach depends on your project's architecture, but you could store the email addresses in a database. Always avoid hard-coding sensitive values. The next debugging tool is built into Laravel, the dump and dd functions. To use them, place them in your code where you want to inspect a value, passing the content you want to check as a parameter. You can pass a string to confirm if a specific part of your code is being executed, or pass an object to inspect its attributes. The result will appear on the page, allowing you to expand attributes and check their values interactively. The difference between the two functions is that dump allows the code execution to continue, whereas dd, short for dump and die, will stop code execution entirely. The last tool is LaraDumps. It provides an improved version of the dump and dd functions described earlier. The main limitation of Laravel's dump and dd is their behavior when used in code that isn't directly visible, such as an AJAX response. In such cases, you won't see the interactive output. Instead, you'll see raw text with the code needed to render the interactive element, making it essentially useless. LaraDumps works differently. It's an external program that you need to download first. Link is in the description. After completing the installation process, you need to add the LaraDumps package to your project using the composer command, and then configure it with the command php artisan ds init. The program itself only needs to be installed once, but the composer command and the configuration step must be executed separately for each project. Now, you can use ds in your code instead of dd. The results will appear in the LaraDumps program window, making it easier to inspect values, even in parts of the code that are not directly accessible, such as sections executed via AJAX. The DS helper provides specific methods to display results in various ways. For instance, you can customize the message color, display data as a table, or format it as human-readable JSON. Additionally, you can use it to benchmark closures to measure execution time or monitor queries using the queries on and queries off methods, allowing you to track database activity from a specific starting point to the end. Full usage details will be presented in a separate video, or you can refer to the documentation. Personally, I use all these tools, but not always in the same project. I install the tools I need as and when required. Choose the ones that suit your needs, and your debugging process will become more efficient.